please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Let's get straight to the top story this evening. The board of Fortis Healthcare has finally announced the Munjal-Burman consortium as a preferred buyer, thereby concluding a hotly debated and conducted bidding war. Here are the deal contours. The Munjal-Burman consortium has offered to invest a total of 1,800 crore rupees. This includes an upfront infusion of over 1,050 crore rupees. The remaining 750 crore rupees will be invested in the next 4 months' time. Now, the consortium plans to fund the deal by investing 800 crore rupees, and this will be via a preferential issue of equity at 167 rupees per share and 1,000 crore rupees at 176 rupees per share. Now, as per this very offer, the average valuation of shares comes at 172 rupees per share, and the offer further proposes 3 seats in the Fortis board as well as divestment of stake in the SRL Diagnostics via a competitive bid process. The sale proceeds will be used to fund the acquisition of RHT Health Trust. But while the Fortis board has backed Munjal-Burman offer, 3 independent directors nominated by shareholders are still not in favour of the deal, and we learned from sources that IHH may approach shareholders to seek support for its offers. Here is a slice of a conversation with the bid winners, the Munjal-Burman Consortium and Fortis board's brain tempest.
We believe that the shareholders will vote with us and support us all the way through.
This is clearly in the interest of the company, all the people involved with the company, the employees, doctors, nurses, patients, and more importantly, from the shareholders' point of view, it is actually the best thing for the shareholders as well, because if the company starts to get better, its liquidity improves, its margins improve, its growth takes place, that is what the shareholders really want. That's how the shareholders' value gets built. We do hope that they will see merit in what our coming into Fortis's larger shareholders than we are today will bring, because we believe the entity will benefit, we believe the system will benefit, and we believe Fortis can get back to where it needs to be, being a leading healthcare provider. And our attempt would be to help build this into the finest system in Asia, and that should benefit everybody, especially the shareholders.
We looked at all the different binding bids from the point of view of certainty versus risk, and we looked at them from the point of view also of liquidity for the company. And as you know, we took the advice of an expert advisory committee that had got 2 eminent gentlemen that were on it, who were able to give us some good advice. We also took the advice from two financial organizations, and also we took advice from a legal organization as well. And when we took all those elements together and we evaluated the 4 binding bids that we reviewed, the one that had the majority support was the Dabur and Hero group.
Now let's move on to the big corporate headline at this hour. Ravi Venkatesan has resigned as the independent director from the Infosys board. He has been with Infosys for 7 years, and according to the company's statement, he is stepping down to pursue a new role. Rukmini Rao joins in now with the details. Rukmini, what else are you picking up about Ravi's resignation? And you know, the press release very interestingly says that he is taking up a new exciting role. Do we have any idea about what that is? And also take us through the background about this involvement of Ravi Venkatesan with the Infosys board.
Well, Ravi Venkatesan, an independent director on the board of Infosys, stepping down really marks the first exit of a board member after Nandan Nilekani has taken over as the chairman. In fact, the release from Infosys goes on to say that he is moving on to pursue newer opportunities. But however, if we are to look at Ravi's tenure at Infosys, he came on the board of Infosys way back in 2011, has served for over 7 long years. In fact, during the entire Vishal Sikka's tenure, where we also saw how there was a discord between the management and also the founders, Ravi in fact was being seen as one of the key persons who in fact was communicating between the founders and the board members and also the management throughout. Also, Ravi was elevated as the co-chair of the company way back in April last year, but of course stepped down once Nandan Nilekani took over. We of course spoke to some sources at Infosys very closely associated with Infosys and who've been long observers of what has been happening in the company, going on to say that this is really a fallout of the entire Vishal Sikka incident, and his exit, of course, has to be read with what earlier had happened with the company, with Kiran Shah actually taking over as the independent lead director of the company. We'll now have to see how Infosys works around the constitution of its board, if there are going to be any more additions to the board, and if there are going to be any more exits. These are some of the questions that perhaps coming days will answer. Back to you.
Oh, absolutely. There's critical questions, but that was pretty much expected ever since the new management has come on. But thanks, Rukmini, for taking us through that. Moving on, social networking major Facebook has responded to the second notice sent by the IT Ministry. Remember, the notice sought more details on the data breach scandal, where Cambridge Analytica accessed data of over 87 million Facebook users in an unauthorized way. According to sources, Facebook in their response has listed the steps that they have taken to stop the potential misuse. In fact, Ritu Bhuyan is here with the exact details. Ritu, what exactly is that notice and the SOS that has been sent?
In its reply to the second set of queries by Ministry of IT, Facebook has done two things. Firstly, it has specified measures that it is taking to taking to stop misuse, and on that count, it has told the Ministry of IT that it's going to double the the manpower it has from 10,000 to 20,000 that will be dealing specifically with misuse. Also, it has told the Ministry of IT that only authorized entities and advertisers will be allowed to post political ads, and it will also put in public domain the list of advertisers which it had rejected. It also told the Ministry of IT that while it is blocking a lot of fake profiles, it is at the same time developing systems and software that will be basically used to stop automated programs from trying to create fake accounts. Now, the second part of the reply, according to sources, is related to information on who will be the points person in India from Facebook, who will be dealing with the Ministry of IT on any queries related to data breach. However, it has told the Ministry of IT that it doesn't know how its third-party app processes sensitive personal data. It has also told the Ministry of IT that it doesn't know what kind of data was shared between Cambridge Analytica and GSR. With that, it's back to you.
Okay, fair enough. So at least there is some kind of clarity as to how this is going to progress. Ritu, thanks for joining in with that. We will take a very short break, but on the other side, Supreme Court Collegium has formed a consensus on reiteration of Justice K.M. Joseph's name for elevation to the Apex Court. We get you all those details on the other side. Welcome back to What's Hot. Latest from the GST space. A meeting of the group of ministers on digital payments ended on an inconclusive note. According to sources, the group couldn't reach an agreement as revenue loss to the states was not adequately quantified. Some members of the council also raised concerns on using GST as a tool to incentivize digital transactions. We caught up with several state finance ministers, and here's exactly what they had to say.
आज ये जो डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शंस को इंसेंटिवाइज करने के लिए जो ग्रुप ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की बैठक हुई, उसमें अभी एक बैठक और करने की आवश्यकता पड़ेगी। कई तरह के इश्यूज आए हैं और उन सारे इश्यूज पर विचार हम लोग करेंगे कि इस डिजिटल इंसेंटिव देने से क्या लाभ होगा, क्या नुकसान होगा, इन सारे पहलुओं पर और कई तरह के मुद्दे आए हैं और इसलिए उन सारी चीज़ों पर विचार करने के लिए फिर एक और बैठक होगी। इन द मीन टाइम the officials, they will collecting some data. So what will the losses, what will the gain, and many other issues which have been raised by the ministers also, and even many of the states, they have sent their comments on this particular topic.
We will have to go threadbare on each of the viewpoints, whether they are differing from each other, whether they are agreeing from each other. And the officials will go into the data mining and data analysis based on the inputs received at today's meeting. And then in the next meeting, we'll again go threadbare with little more information, maybe some international studies as well, to look at best practices elsewhere. And then we will collectively come together. So I do not want to say anything individually. Our individual positions are known to the media.
I think one thing that the subcommittee was in agreement was that the shadow economy needs to be decreased. And India must become a cashless society. And for that, one way would be to study the best practices of many countries. Korea was one, Brazil was one, so on and so forth. Also, there were some concerns about the data which was being presented. So the officials have been asked that at the next meeting, you come up with some scientific, credible data. What would be the revenue loss, and how do we get to the threshold that when more people go cashless, so then we can become, it could become a revenue neutral proposition.
All right, moving on to Deal Street. Walmart is shelling out $16 billion for 77% in Flipkart. How will this deal impact Flipkart's fashion subsidiaries, Myntra and Jabong? Let's ask the man running both those companies. The CEO, Anant Narayanan, is joining in. Ananta, thank you so much for joining in on the show. To begin with, how will you use Walmart's entry in terms of synergies for both Flipkart and Myntra?
Sure. So, look, firstly, I think it's a historic deal for the Flipkart group.
Absolutely.
I think Walmart are long-term investors. I think this is a major strategic investment for them. So on the Myntra and Jabong side, they're very excited because I think it brings long-term capital. It will hopefully help us accelerate our journey in terms of becoming the fashion destination in India. As you know, we also are quite into omni-channel, and we have our own stores.
Yeah.
So we also hope to benefit in terms of capabilities and learnings from the Walmart system. So I think that will certainly be a benefit. But more than anything else, I think it's just long-term capital and an ability to think bigger and bolder for us.
You know, Anand, since you spoke about capital, $2 billion, the fresh issue and equity infusion that will be coming in. How much of that can we expect coming into Myntra and Jabong specifically, or into the entire fashion segment portfolio?
So, actually, don't really know. I think the way we do capital allocation is based on our overall business plans.
Okay.
At the current point, we are well capitalized. We have our annual operating plan for 2019. As I've spoken to you guys before, we're aiming at about, we're aiming at large numbers this time. So I don't think there's any change. I don't think there's any immediate capital allocation that's actually planned.
Okay. Anand, the focus for Myntra has been to grow private labels. What kind of opportunity does this mean with Walmart coming on board? Walmart is very excited about the fashion segment per se. So what kind of opportunity does this throw up?
Yeah, so I think, there are many opportunities, both in the short and in the midterm.
Okay.
I think one is we can certainly benefit from learning from Walmart around our global sourcing and how do we actually get real benefits of scale. That may happen in a bit. The second, I think, is, some of our private labels perhaps could go global, especially the Bollywood brands where I think there is Indian diaspora, and now there's a
that was going to be my next question, Anant. You have brands like HRX, All About You, Dressberry, Roadster. Which of these brands are going to get that global platform? And are you saying that, most of the private labels are going to get that global platform with Walmart on board?
So, too early to comment, but I'm hoping that a couple of brands, especially the Bollywood ones, there will be real, there'll be a real opportunity, especially when there's large Indian diaspora, right, outside globally. So I think early days, Kritika, so I think don't know yet, but I'm certainly excited about the possibility, and it's some of the things that we will be discussing.
Okay, that is very critical. But Anant, Walmart also has several private labels. So has there been any kind of discussion to bring Walmart's private labels like George, for instance, into the Indian market? Would that be a part of the synergies?
Actually, by the way, we're thinking less in terms of synergy and more in terms of things that we can learn from each other, and I think it's going to be very much of a pull model. So not yet, but you never say never.
Fair enough. In terms of revenue growth then, Anant, what kind of incremental revenue do you expect to flow into most of these private labels, purely from an outlook perspective with Walmart on board?
Yeah, so too early to tell, Kritika, right? I think in the next several months, as we firm up our plans, we will know a bit more around how we want to think about the next year. I think in the current year, we're just going to continue on our plan as is.
Okay.
And I think we have ambitious plans, which I've spoken about earlier. So I think that continues to be what we're going after.
Anand, speaking about ambitious plans, you had said earlier to us, in fact, that you were expecting to break even in 6 to 12 months. So is that plan intact? Can that be sooner? And what's the road to profitability looking like for you?
So, we're continuing to push to make sure that all the right investments are there for growth, while the operating business continues to improve in profitability. I think that journey we're continuing. But we are starting new categories. As I've told you, personal care is something that I think we're now very excited by. Omnichannel is another area where we're making investments. We also opened, as you know, a small center in Palo Alto for data science. So we're also starting to make a bunch of investments for the long term while continuing to improve the operating profits.
All right, Anand, thank you so much for taking us through those details and that special discussion. That is the first critical discussion that has come in terms of commentary from Flipkart's side. A lot of talks as far as synergies and growth is concerned, and of course we will be watching that space very closely. But let's get to the big story from court corner. The Supreme Court Collegium has reached an in-principle agreement to reiterate Justice K.M. Joseph's name for elevation to the apex court. The Collegium met today, a day after Justice Justi Chelameshwar, the second senior most judge of the Supreme Court, wrote to CJI Deepak Mishra asking him to convene a meeting of the Collegium for the same. Remember, earlier last month, the centre had returned the Collegium's proposal to elevate Justice Joseph to the top court. The centre had argued that the recommendations were not in accordance with parameters. The centre had further argued that Kerala, the state where Justice Joseph came from, had adequate representation in the Supreme Court. Ashmit Kumar is here with details. Ashmit, so the Collegium arriving at a consensus, yes. So where do you see the matter going from here?
Well, will they or won't they? That was the big question before the Supreme Court Collegium. Will they go ahead and reiterate Justice K.M. Joseph's name? And well, like most cases before the apex court, the answer is not a simple black or white, but a stream of greys. And keep grey in mind, given that this meeting does come on the back of a strongly worded letter written by Justice Chelameshwar, where he said that the government cannot be allowed to cherry pick, that the Supreme Court must stand firm and must reiterate Justice K.M. Joseph's name. Which brings us to the meeting that took place today, lasted about 40-odd minutes this afternoon. And let's take a look at the big takeaways. The biggest takeaway here is that there does appear to be consensus between the Chief Justice on one hand and the 4 dissenting judges on the other. There is consensus that Justice K.M. Joseph's name needs to be elevated. But no decision has been taken to that effect, because the decision also of the Collegium is that his name shall be sent, but it shall be sent along with recommendations of other judges that need to be elevated. So that's an important caveat that needs to be kept in mind. Which brings us to the next step. The next step is the Collegium meeting on May 16th, when it will decide on the names of other judges that need to be elevated, and those names will be clubbed with Justice K.M. Joseph's name. So that will happen at a later date, nothing as of right now. Which brings us to 5 sticky points. First sticky point is, why so much concern over Justice K.M. Joseph's name? Well, keep in mind that he was the judge who had quashed the imposition of president's rule in the state of Uttarakhand that had been imposed by a BJP-led government. The second sticky point is that as of right now, the only consensus that has been formed is that he will be reiterated at a future date, not as of right now, and that the name hasn't been reiterated as of right now. So status quo is his name continues to be with the Collegium, has not been reiterated as of yet. The third sticky point is that the names will be sent with other names of other judges that need to be elevated, and that deciding on the other names will require detailed discussions with no indication being given as to how long the detailed discussions might last. So that's another aspect that needs to be kept in mind. The fourth sticky point is the law of the land. Well, this is quite simple here, that as far as the law of the land is concerned, it's very clear that once the Supreme Court, once the Collegium reiterates the name, the government then becomes bound to accept it. So that's one thing that the government will have to keep in mind. And the fifth and perhaps the most important point is the timeline. The simple answer to that is, well, there is no timeline in place. So there is no saying whether the government will have to act on this recommendation in an expeditious fashion, or if the government can sit on the file indefinitely. No answer to that question. So clearly, 5 sticky points as of right now, 5 questions that emerge, all eyes now on May 16th, and the decision that the 5 senior-most judges of the apex court take with respect to Justice K.M. Joseph.
Okay, 5 sticky points, 5 questions. We, of course, cannot have the answers immediately, and that is something that we'll be tracking very closely. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of What's All. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. The Indian indices ended the nearly 2% in the green for the week, but the mid-caps underperformed marginally. Taking stock is up next. That show will prepare you for the next trading week. Don't go anywhere.